All right, let's dive into this case you're interested in. Case name. This one, it really threw investigators for a loop.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's got everything that gets people hooked on true crime, like a crime that seems impossible, a whole community living in fear, and this chase for justice that, well, it goes in some pretty wild directions.
I can see why that would be fascinating. Those kinds of cases, they kind of show us how fragile our everyday lives can be. Makes you wonder who you can really trust.
Exactly. Okay, so imagine this. Location, a cold November night.
Okay.
Quiet neighborhood, like the kind of place where everyone knows their neighbors. It's around 9:45 p.m., and all of a sudden, that quiet is broken by a 911 call. Someone's reporting a break-in at the house of victim's name who was a well-respected age-old occupation.
A break-in. Right off the bat, you've got chaos, danger. Do we know if this was just some random act or was the victim's name targeted for some reason?
Well, that's the question investigators had to figure out. But get this. The scene, it was way worse than a typical break-in. Victim's name was brutally attacked. The house was a mess. But here's the thing. There was no sign of forced entry.
Hold on. No forced entry. Now, that's interesting. That makes you think, right? It's like maybe the victim knew their attacker. Maybe it wasn't some random act at all. It feels more planned out, personal when you think about it.
You got it. And that's where the whole puzzle starts. Detectives were all over that crime scene looking for anything, any little trace of whoever did it. Fingerprints, DNA, every detail, you name it. Problem was, this killer was careful, didn't leave much behind.
It sounds like a classic premeditated crime. Someone went to a lot of trouble to cover their tracks. Chilling, really. Anything at all. Any clues to point the investigators in the right direction.
Just a couple, and they only made things more confusing. They found one glove at the scene and part of a footprint outside the house. Now, think about that for a second. Why just one glove? A mistake? Or was it on purpose? Like maybe they wanted to mess with the investigation.
Ooh, good point. Almost like a taunt. Leaving a sign they were there, but hiding who they were at the same time. Did the investigators have any leads to go on at this point?
They were working with practically nothing. But then, bam, a big break. A neighbor had seen a suspicious car near victim's name's house the night of the murder. And wouldn't you know it, the description matched up perfectly with a car belonging to suspect's name, a local handyman. Turns out he had done some work for the victim a little while before.
A handyman. So he had access to the victim's home, and the car matches. It all seems to add up, doesn't it? But you gotta be careful here. We have to remember that this is all circumstantial, right? Circumstantial evidence, it can be misleading.
No doubt. It's like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle, but you're missing half the pieces.
Exactly. You might have a hunch about the picture, but without all the pieces, it's impossible to be absolutely sure.
Right.
To get a conviction, you need more than just a car and a connection. The prosecution, they would need a strong motive, or maybe a confession, even better, that hard proof, what we call the smoking gun.
And that's where this case throws that first curveball I mentioned. Just when they thought they were zeroing in on the handyman, something crazy happened.
Oh, I'm on the edge of my seat here. What happened?
It turns out the handyman, suspect's name, had an airtight alibi for the night of the murder.
Wait a minute. So the handyman, the guy with the connection to the victim, the matching car, is completely ruled out. Wow, talk about a twist. What did the investigators do then?
They had to go back to the drawing board, rethink everything. Remember that single glove? It became their new obsession. Weeks of analysis, and finally those forensic experts, they pulled a partial DNA profile from it. That's the power of forensics. Yeah.
Unbelievable. This tiny little thing, a glove, it could hold the whole key to solving the case. It really shows you how DNA analysis has changed how we investigate crimes. So, did they get a match?
At first, no, nothing in their database. So they widened the search. They started comparing it against a bigger database, people arrested or convicted in other states.
Smart move. Criminals, they don't always stay put. They move around, hoping to disappear. Did that wider search turn anything up?
It did. The DNA on the glove, it matched a guy named second suspect's name. But here's the weird part. This guy, second suspect's name, he had zero connection to victim's name or location as far as they could tell. He lived hundreds of miles away, no criminal record in the state.
Wow, that's a curveball, all right. No connection, miles away. It's like the investigators were chasing a ghost. How did they connect this new guy, second suspect's name, to the crime?
Good old-fashioned detective work, and a little bit of luck, I guess. Digging into his background, they found out he traveled a lot for work, took temporary jobs in different cities.
So they started looking into his work history, right? See if he'd been in location around the time of the murder. That makes sense. If he was just passing through, he could easily come and gone without anyone noticing.
Yeah, and that's where the luck came in. They found an old work order from a construction company that had employed him in location. And guess when? The very same month as the murder.
No way, what a coincidence. Or maybe not a coincidence at all. Seems like the puzzle pieces were finally starting to click into place. But how could they be sure this was their guy? They needed something more concrete to put him at the crime scene.
They did. Armed with this new information, they got a warrant to search his home, his car, the whole 9 yards. Hidden away in a toolbox in his garage, they found a pair of work boots.
Aha. And
And when they compared the tread on those boots to that footprint from the crime scene, a perfect match.
boom. Now that's what I call a smoking gun. A real physical link between him and the murder scene. Looks like they finally had their man, or at least enough evidence to arrest him and get him in front of a jury. But what about motive? Did they ever find out why this guy, seemingly out of nowhere, would want to hurt victim's name?
That's still a mystery to this day. Second suspect's name? He insisted he was innocent the whole time. Never said a word about why he'd do it. He took that secret to prison, leaving everyone wondering what could possibly make someone do something so brutal to a complete stranger.
Makes you think, doesn't it? Someone capable of that much violence without any reason we can figure out. It really challenges what we think we know about people, reminds us that there are dark parts of the human mind we might never understand.
No kidding. Case name. It's a perfect example of how an investigation that seems simple at first can turn into this giant web of twists and turns. Started with a break-in, but that missing forced entry, that was a huge red flag right away.
For sure. That one detail changed everything. It pointed toward the crime clan, suggested a connection between the victim and whoever attacked them. And at first, it all seemed to lead back to that handyman.
Right.
So when that handyman's alibi checked out, it forced the investigators to go back and look at every single piece of evidence, every assumption they'd made. Shows you how important it is to stay flexible in these investigations. They can't get tunnel vision right. Got to be ready for new information, willing to change their thinking as new evidence pops up.
Absolutely. And you never know what detail might end up being the key. I mean, remember, it was that single glove, something that seemed random at first, that led them to second suspect's name through his DNA. If they hadn't bothered with that glove, who knows what would have happened.
That's what's so cool and challenging about forensic science. It's all about being super careful, having that expertise, and noticing every little thing. It's like finding these microscopic clues that connect the dots, and bam, there's the truth.
And in this case, the forensics, that was everything. The DNA match, the footprints, even how they analyzed the crime scene, all of it built that case against second suspect's name.
Right.
This case also shows how important it is for different law enforcement agencies to work together and for them to work with the forensics experts. Don't forget that DNA match came from a national database. It proves that sharing information and working as a team can be what cracks a case, especially when you're dealing with something that crosses state lines.
You said it. It's not just about one brilliant detective. It's about everyone working together, communicating, and all being focused on getting justice. It's about knowing that even when a case seems hopeless, if you keep at it, use the right tools and expertise, you can find the truth.
Exactly. Catching second suspect's name, it gave the community some sense of closure. But it also left them with this uneasy feeling. The fact that some random guy, no motive that anyone could find, could do something so awful. It makes you realize people can be unpredictable.
It's a scary thought, isn't it? That evil can be anywhere, and even with all the progress we've made in forensics and investigation, we might never fully understand what drives some people to do these horrible things. Even though we have a resolution, this case leaves us with a lot more questions than answers.
For sure. Makes you question how safe you really are, even in a community that seems peaceful. Because under the surface, well, who knows what's lurking there.
Makes you think twice, that's for sure. You got to stay aware, a little skeptical, especially when you're dealing with people.
You really do. But hey, for everyone listening, I hope this deep dive into Case Name has given you a look into how these criminal investigations work, how powerful forensic science can be, and how dedicated these investigators are to bringing these criminals to justice. It does make you think. But for you listening, we hope this deep dive into the Case Name has given you a glimpse into the intricacies of criminal investigations, the power of forensic science, and the dedication of those who work tirelessly to bring perpetrators to justice.
It's a chilling reminder that none of us are truly immune to the unpredictable nature of the world around us. But perhaps that's also what draws us to true crime, this need to understand the darkness, to grapple with the complexities of human behavior, and to find reassurance in the fact that justice, however imperfect, can still prevail.
It's a way of confronting our fears, exploring the boundaries of human experience, and perhaps even learning something about ourselves in the process.
Absolutely. We look for patterns, for explanations, for some sense of order in the chaos. And while we may not always find the answers we seek, the journey itself can be enlightening.
Right.
It's about acknowledging that even in a world where technology and forensic science have advanced significantly, there will always be mysteries that remain unsolved, motives that remain shrouded in darkness, and questions that linger long after the gavel has fallen.
And maybe that's okay. The most important lesson we can glean from cases like the case name isn't about finding all the answers, but about embracing the ambiguity, the uncertainty, and the complexities of human existence.
Yeah, it's about accepting that the world isn't always black and white, that there are shades of gray that we may never fully comprehend.
It's about recognizing that even in the face of darkness and despair, there is still hope, resilience, and the unwavering pursuit of justice.
And maybe most importantly, it's about using these stories, these glimpses into the darker side of human nature, as opportunities for reflection, for growth, and for a renewed appreciation of the preciousness of life and the importance of human connection.
Well said. This deep dive into the case name has been a journey into the heart of a chilling crime, a testament to the power of forensic science, and a reminder of the enduring human quest for justice.
It's a case that will stay with us, prompting us to question, to analyze, and to never take our safety and security for granted.
We hope this exploration has provided you with new insights and perhaps even sparked some thought-provoking conversations.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and remember, the truth is often stranger than fiction.
So after days, days of thinking it over, the jury came back with their decision. Guilty. Second suspect's name was found guilty of first-degree murder.
Guilty. So the evidence, especially that forensic stuff connecting him to the scene, it must have been enough to convince them, beyond a reasonable doubt. What was it like in the courtroom when they read the verdict?
Oh, it was a mix of everything. Relief, of course, that it was finally over, but also you could feel the sadness for victims' name's family. They had gone through so much. Even with the guilty verdict, that doesn't erase what happened.
Yeah, it's a tough reminder that the justice system, it does what it can, but it can't take away the pain of something like this. Maybe there's closure eventually, but the scars, they stick around. Did second suspect's name, did he ever explain himself? Did they ever find a motive?
That's one of the eeriest things about this whole case. He kept saying he was innocent all through the trial, never gave a reason why he'd do it, took that secret with him right to prison. It leaves everyone wondering what could push someone to do something so brutal to a person they don't even know.
It's a chilling thought, isn't it? That kind of violence, no reason we can understand, makes you wonder about the dark side of human nature, Some things, maybe we just aren't meant to understand.
It really does. Case name. It's a classic example of how a seemingly simple investigation, it can turn into this tangled mess, full of twists and turns. It all started with a break-in, but that lack of forced entry, that was a red flag from the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. That one detail, it flipped the whole script. Made it seem like the crime was planned, that there was some personal connection between the victim and the attacker. Remember, early on, it seemed like it was all pointing to the handyman.
Right.
And then, when his alibi checked out, the investigators had to reevaluate every single thing, every assumption. It just goes to show you have to be flexible in these investigations. Can't get stuck on one idea. You gotta be ready for new info. Change your thinking when the evidence takes you in a new direction.
Exactly. You never know what tiny detail will crack the case wide open. Think about that single glove. At first it seemed random, but then it led them straight to second suspect's name, through his DNA. If they had ignored that glove, who knows if they would have ever found him.
That's the thing about forensics. It's so fascinating. It's all about being meticulous, having that expertise, seeing the tiniest clues. It's like you're connecting these microscopic dots, and suddenly the picture becomes clear.
And in this case, forensics, that was the key. The DNA, the footprints, how they studied the crime scene itself, all of it came together to build that case against him.
Yep.
It also shows how important it is for law enforcement to work together, different agencies, and to bring in the forensic experts. That DNA match, it came from a national database. It proves that sharing information, Being a team, it can be what solves the puzzle, especially in cases that span across different states.
No question about it. It's not just about one brilliant detective. It's about everyone working together, sharing what they know, and being dedicated to getting justice. It's about believing that even when a case looks unsolvable, if you keep pushing, use the right tools and the smarts, the truth is out there.
You got it. And while Kitching's second suspect's name gave the community a sense of closure, there's still this unsettling feeling. The fact that someone seemingly random, without any motive anyone could find, could commit such a horrific act just reminds us you can never predict what someone is capable of.
It is a scary thought, that kind of evil just lurking out there. And even with all the amazing advancements in forensics and investigations, some things might always remain a mystery. Some motives, they stay hidden in the dark. And the questions, they linger, even after the case is closed.
It really does make you think. But for everyone listening, I hope our deep dive into Case Name gave you a look into how these criminal investigations unfold, the incredible impact of forensic science, and the unwavering commitment of those who dedicate themselves to bringing criminals to justice. It reminds us that even in a world filled with advanced technology and cutting-edge forensic tools, there will always be mysteries that leave us searching for answers. But maybe that's okay. Perhaps the most profound lesson we can take away from cases like this isn't about finding all the answers, but about accepting the unknown, those shades of gray that we may never fully grasp. It's about knowing that even when faced with darkness and tragedy, there's still hope, resilience, and that constant pursuit of justice. Until next time, stay curious, keep those minds sharp, and remember sometimes the truth is a lot stranger than anything we